Coming up to 6:30 now, time for the latest weekend news.
Wealthiest countries commit to stopping some of the world's wealthiest companies avoiding tax. At a summit in the UK, the G7 take a big step towards reining in the tech giants.
I think the crucial thing for people to take away is the principle of fairness. That's what we've achieved today to ensure that there's a level playing field for all types of companies.
Some under 20s start lining up for the COVID vaccine, but could England have to wait an additional 2 weeks for the final lifting of restrictions? We will still take the knee. The England manager Gareth Southgate's message to fans.
We feel that more than ever determined to take the knee through this tournament. We accept that there might be an adverse reaction and we're just going to ignore that.
A dream for Adam Kirby. The musical jockey stairs stopped and he landed the winner.
A surprise result in the Derby as the Queen misses only her 4th race in 75 years.
This is ITV News with Romilly Weeks.
Good evening. It's taken years of negotiations, but today the Chancellor hailed an historic agreement on corporation tax reached by some of the world's richest countries. If implemented globally, it will mean 2 things. An end to big multinationals like tech giants paying little or no tax on their profits, and a guarantee that at least some of that tax will stay in the country where the sales took place. It's intended to ensure big companies pay a minimum global rate of at least 15% and force online sales to be taxed more like other purchases. Rishi Sunak said it will make things fairer, but there are still many hurdles to overcome. Our political correspondent David Wood has this report.
They are household names right across the world, but how much they're taxed and where they pay it could all be about to change. For years, finance ministers have looked to clamp down on global big tech companies. Today, 7 of the world's biggest economies agreed a plan. It includes a global minimum 15% rate of corporation tax. That's the tax businesses pay on profits.
I think the crucial thing for people to take away is the principle of fairness. That's what we've achieved today to ensure that there's a level playing field for all types of companies, and whether it's people operating in tax havens or it's digital companies, we're going to level the playing field and inject that principle of fairness into our global tax system. That's the prize.
At the moment, multinational businesses have subsidiaries registered all over the world, and they can legally move sales or profits between them to minimise their tax bills. The UK taxes corporate profits at 19%. According to the Tax Justice Network, the effective corporation tax rate in Ireland, the Netherlands and Luxembourg can be as low as 1.8%. And in tax havens like the Cayman Islands and Bermuda, it's nothing at all.
That global minimum tax would end the race to the bottom in corporate taxation and ensure fairness for the middle class and working people in the US and around the world.
The G7 also wants to change how the most successful global businesses are taxed, agreeing they should pay tax on 20% of their profits in the country they sell their products and not where they're based. One former Treasury official says that will benefit the UK.
Last year, Microsoft made £220 billion in profit. They paid 0 corporation tax because they said they're making their profits in Bermuda. These reforms will help ensure it doesn't matter where Microsoft say they make their profits, they'll be taxed on where they make their sales.
Some of the companies that could be forced to pay more tax have welcomed today's agreement, but asked for certainty soon about how and where their bills will be delivered.
So, David, the G7 has agreed this minimum tax plan, but it's not going to take effect right away, is it?
No, it's not. And this is only an agreement in principle, and it's taken just 7 countries, the best part of a decade, to come up with it. Now they need to convince many other countries to come into line. Ireland, for example, not too pleased with this, understands change is coming. We need at least, or the government will need at least G20 nations to agree to it. And the other issue, that tax there on some of the profits of big tech companies, that'll only affect those with big profit margins. There are concerns companies like Amazon may not have enough profit. That said, the US says that's not likely to be the case. So still a lot of questions do need answering. Ultimately, though, this is a historic day to have such an agreement on tax with so many nations. But it's far too early, I think, to say yet whether it will actually change anything.
Right, thanks for explaining that. The battle lines seem to be hardening tonight over the lifting of COVID restrictions in England on the 21st of June. The government appears to be considering a 2-week delay to the 5th of July. And while some experts would welcome that caution, others say the vaccines have made it unnecessary. Richard Pallow has more.
More than 40 million of us have now had our first jabs, and 18 and overs were prepared to queue for 5 hours today to be part of that number. Many offered the opportunity at this North London clinic, said they wanted to be vaccinated before going clubbing again in a few weeks.
This has cost me 1.4 million.
But will they be able to help this owner start recouping his losses? Or might the Prime Minister alter the roadmap?
I'm working on that maybe we'll be open to full capacity on June the 21st. And then all these rumours, I mean, if he knows, say it. But all these rumours about whether we're going to open or not, how am I supposed to financially survive?
Government sources have again stressed that no decision has been made. But I understand that in private, other plans are being drawn up. If there was a 2-week delay, then in theory, all over 50s would get the chance of a second vaccination and crucially get time to build up the immunity in that extra fortnight. That's in England. In Scotland, restrictions have been eased today a little. Those living in Glasgow finally able to have alcohol in a bar or restaurant and to meet up in others' homes. Guidelines are also being relaxed in Wales from Monday.
We know that there are much lower levels of hospitalisations compared to previous waves. The people who are coming into hospital are younger and need less critical care. And we also know, therefore, that there's a pretty good chance that the vaccines are breaking the chain between the virus and hospitalisations and mortality.
Encouragingly, there's also been a sharp drop in vaccine hesitancy. Here in Bedford, they've been surge testing door to door. But a group of prominent independent scientists warn it's too early to unlock fully.
It would be a mistake to commit to a reopening on the 21st of June. We are at a very delicate stage.
What restrictions would you like to see brought back in?
We do argue that we need to reimpose mask wearing for secondary schools, and we want to strengthen our border control with strict quarantine.
There is some light at the end of the tunnel, yet far from an agreement on when to let it all in. Richard Pallow, ITV News.
The Trade Association for UK Airlines has complained about a lack of transparency and consistency over the government's changes to travel rules. The head of Airlines UK said ministers had not kept their promises after the government decided to move Portugal from the green travel list into the amber category. It means travellers arriving in the UK from Portugal from Tuesday will need to self-isolate at home for 10 days. Meanwhile, France has declared itself open to British visitors who are fully vaccinated from next Wednesday. That is, those who've had a second vaccine at least 2 weeks prior to travel and who can show a negative antigen test. But as France remains on the UK's amber list, travellers would still have to quarantine for 10 days on their return. And if you've got any questions about the latest changes to the travel list and what they mean for you, there's lots more information over on our website. Just go to itv.com/holiday news. 2 teenage boys have been arrested in connection with the murder of a 14-year-old who was chased and stabbed to death. Dea John Reid was killed in the Kingsley's attitude towards Harry and Meghan's recent TV interviews. She told the Daily Telegraph, "We're still a family. No matter what happens, we always will be." There have been protests in Venice today, both for and against the return of giant cruise ships to the city. Those opposed say the ships pose a serious risk to the fragile Venice lagoon, whilst others believe the thousands of tourists they bring are vital to the city's economy. The Italian government has pledged to move the ships further away from the islands, but they haven't yet worked out how. Ellie Pitt reports.
There was no fond farewell for tourists leaving Venice this afternoon. Cruise passengers departed amid a flotilla of protesters. Demonstrators thought the Italian government had listened to them when it announced a big ship ban in March. So there was surprise when the MSC orchestra pulled in on Thursday. It can carry more than 3,000 passengers and is the first large cruise liner to dock here since the start of the pandemic. 2 years ago this week, its sister ship crashed into a riverboat in the same canal, causing several injuries. Concerns over the damage cruise ships can do to the environment and Venetian architecture are growing. Celebrities, including Sir Mick Jagger, have signed a letter to Italian officials. This fragile entity, World Heritage Site, cannot survive without our help, it reads.
A lot has been said about our impact in a very fragile and delicate environment, but there is a but. Our contribution to the overall tourism inflow is fairly minimal. We're just a tiny fraction of the overall tourism.
Many livelihoods depend on tourism here. After a year without visitors, businesses are desperate for their money again. There are new political promises to relocate the city's docking spot, but as the world opens back up, old arguments are returning to the surface. Ellie Pitt, ITV News.
The England manager Gareth Southgate says the team will continue to take the knee at the start of their matches, despite the action being booed recently. He admitted the gesture may be starting to wane in popularity, but said the players were united in continuing to promote an anti-racist message. Chris Scudder reports.
England versus Austria 3 days ago.
Before we start here, all the players will take the knee.
England fans booing their own players taking the knee. It's an issue that threatens to disrupt England's preparations with the start of the Euros only a week away. But the players will continue to do it.
We had a productive meeting with a group of the players yesterday. We feel that more than ever, determined to take the knee through this tournament. We accept that there might be an adverse reaction, and we're just going to ignore that.
You know, I think the lads and the team spoke about it together, and you know, we came up with the conclusion that regardless of what goes on, you know, around, we're still gonna participate in the kneeling, and I think that's a great idea.
But there are question marks about the effectiveness of the gesture after more than a year. Crystal Palace player Wilfried Zaha declines to take the knee because players still receive abuse.
There's an acceptance that this gesture, if you like, is waning in its impact, because we've been going now for a season.
You did say that you thought there might be an adverse reaction. What did you mean by that?
I think we have to accept that there could be elements of the crowd that boo. That would be hugely disappointing for us, but we're prepared to go through that.
The booing at England's match against Austria was not the first time, and it may not be the last. But England remain undaunted and united ahead of tomorrow's warm-up match against Romania. Chris Scudder, ITV News.
The Queen was not in attendance at the Epsom Derby today for only the fourth time in 75 years. It's thought COVID restrictions prompted her to watch on ITV instead, as a surprise winner romped home.
A dream for Adam Kirby, and he landed the winner!
Clear favourite Bolshoi Ballet was beaten by the 16-1 outsider Adayar. The Godolphin horse led by 4.5 lengths ahead of second-place Mojo Star and Hurricane Lane in third. Jockey Adam Kirby was taken aback by his victory, which he said will have made his mum proud.
I couldn't believe it. All I could think I was my mother would be watching, you know. It's, no, that made me a bit sad there for a second, but she will, and she'll be happy.
And a single UK ticket holder has scooped this weekend's £111 million Euro Millions jackpot. The lucky player matched all 7 numbers in the draw, but the prize hasn't yet been claimed, so it could be worth checking your ticket if you have one. It's the 4th Euro Millions jackpot to be won in the UK this year. Not me, sadly, and that is it for now. I'm back with the late news at 10.